Welcome to Leadership, the Secret Sauce, the podcast where we talk to extraordinary coaches and leaders to dive into the realms of leadership and coaching. We're your hosts, Dave Lipsky and Matt Dodson. So let's jump in with another guest and find out their answer to the question, what is your secret sauce? All right, before we dive in, a special thank you to our sponsor, Character Matters Coaching and Consulting. At Character Matters, we believe leadership isn't just about results, it's about who you are while you're achieving them. Whether you're facing career transitions, building stronger teams, or navigating personal growth, we help leaders unlock clarity, strengthen resilience, and lead with authenticity. Because when your character grows, your impact grows. Learn more at charactermatterscoaching.com. In today's episode, we are sitting down with Sandra Stewart to uncover her secret sauce, or that secret sauce of leadership and coaching. And we'll get into her story, her challenges, maybe what she's learned along the way. We know you won't want to miss it because we think that I attended one of her pre-conference sessions at ICF Converge, and it just there were so many things about it. I was like, yes, I am so glad someone is seeing this same thing in terms of how change managers really, how the intersection between change management and coaching. I think you want to listen to it. So welcome, Sandra, Sandy. It's really great to have you. Dave?
Thanks. Yeah, thank you very much. So do you prefer Sandy or Sandra?
Sandy's great. Yeah.
Sandy's great.
You guys, it's Sandy.
Oh man, I'm feeling good already. So we like to start off with like just a brief energy check-in on a scale from 1 to 10, 1 low, 10 high. What's your energy level in the present moment?
I'd say it is a 8.
An 8. And Matt, where are you?
Yeah, I'm at 9.5. I just had my third cup of coffee. And then, of course, our pre-discussion with Sandy was just a lot of fun. And so, yeah.
Yeah, I'm at a 10 because, as you both know, I'm waiting for the call for my first grandchild to come. So very exciting. So Sandy, what level did you say? You said 7.5 or 8?
8.
8?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what has you in 8 this morning?
So I had a little workout this morning. That's good. And paradoxically, I watched the Great British Baking Show while working out.
Yes.
So the two together is pretty great. Yeah. And I'm struggling with a client issue right now, so I think that's bringing me down from the 10. Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to jump right into the questions. So we've kind of talked a little bit about, maybe I would just ask this question, like when you show up as a leader or a coach or a consultant, like what's the uniqueness that you bring to it? Now, oftentimes we ask it in terms of a secret sauce, but what do you think your brand is that you're bringing?
I'd like to answer that 2 ways. Okay, so the first way is I've been a coach since 1999, and I feel that I've grown with the profession, and it has been this phenomenal journey where I have been a coach of so many diverse and interesting groups of people, from top leaders to new people in the workforce, to individuals. And then I've also taught coaching. I've for 2 ICF accredited programs, written a book about coaching, sat on a task force helping ICF and the Association of Change Management Professionals to understand coaching in change. And I also sit on the ethics, the IRB, the Independent Review Board, that reviews all the cases that come before the ICF. Yeah, so it's allowed me this really diverse background. So I think I bring all that to my coaching and my leadership. And it, to delve into building thought leadership really helps you understand what you know or maybe not know, right?
Yeah.
So that's one piece of it, I guess. The other piece is maybe almost in opposition to that. It's like this vulnerability thing. I think coaching is a big lesson in vulnerability. As a former consultant, my job was to walk in a room and look like I knew stuff and had the answers. And so making that transition into coaching meant I had to really give in to that sense of I don't control it. Um, and the time, it's very personal, right? So you are your brand, like you are your product and service. So let's say you're doing a chemistry meeting amongst a couple of coaches and you don't get it. You're like, oh, well, they didn't like me, or your business has like a downturn and you're like, oh gosh, nobody likes me, I personally am always in that vulnerability space, right? And of course, there's the great joke about executive coaches. Do you know this joke about screwing in the light bulb?
How
Uh,
many does it take?
how many executive coaches does it take to screw in a light bulb? Well, just one, Matt, but it really has to want to do it.
That's true. 100%.
So you got to give up the control. Yeah.
Mm. You know what? Can I just add on to something? Because I think you touched on something that is really hard for some of our listeners, new coaches, when they're developed and they're like, hey, just so you know, this is not about you. And then you go out in your business and really you're kind of putting yourself out there and clients are selecting you. And you're like, wait, I thought this isn't supposed to be about me. But at the same time, it's a chemistry match. It is about us or me and us.
Yeah, that's
So,
right.
yeah.
Yeah.
When did you okay, so 1999, 26 short years ago.
Yeah.
Is that how did you experience that in 1999?
Well, so I, have business background and then I was in consulting. And in my early days consulting, I would go into this, the C-suite or whatever, and you got to be the one to give them advice about their organization. And you do a lot of research and so forth, and then you come up with some recommendations. And early days, the one thing my mantra was, look, I don't know if I can be helpful here, but my intention is to be helpful. And so I'll do my best to be helpful. And if it's not good enough, that's okay. I'll just have done what I can do. Yeah. So I
Mm.
carry that to my coaching.
And maybe you can say this. So you kind of talk and you shared at the pre-conference around this intersection between change management and coaching. Do you think
Mm.
that's something that some of the new coaches that are just coming into this sort of profession, is that untapped, or is it, I mean, are you that much better of a coach when you understand kind of change and
Mm.
how
Yeah.
does that work?
Yeah. So a lot of change management professionals, so they're trained in change management, organizational development, the process of change, the tools that you use in change. A lot of them are getting certified as coaches because they see the value in being better at the competencies of coaching. The coaches, on the other hand, may not yet be there. I see some of that starting to happen. And yeah, absolutely. So when you coach leaders, one of the things you're listening for is the system in which they're existing, right? And if you have an understanding about how organizations face change, deal with change, what the environment's bringing in change, because inevitably these leaders are all dealing with managing some kind of change internally to themselves as well as in their organizations. So I think we're seeking that more coaches could gain greater learning, in that change space.
I'm still stuck on the light bulb.
Okay,
So,
yeah, we can go back to that.
and I'm going to relate it. I'm going to connect it. So let's say
But he
the
really
light bulb
wants to
doesn't really
know.
want to
It
change,
really wants
right?
to
And
know.
it's in the system, right? And it's, everybody but me. How do you as a coach get that stubborn or stuck client?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, now you're hitting a nerve, David, because that's actually the client issue I'm dealing with right now. And so we talk a lot as coaches about growth mindset, right? I think all of us coaches have been up against that wall where there's a leader that doesn't have a growth mindset, who is reluctant to share any kind of change that they might embark on because it would mean they are less than perfect, perhaps, or whatever that block is for them. And so that underlying challenge is how to make it okay to adopt this process of growth. Sometimes it's purely taking a lever. What is it you want from your organization? And using it as a hammer, so to say, like, if you want this and you're not getting it today and your behavior is X, what kind of behavior do you think you need to get there? So very pragmatic approach. We just use all our coaching skills. Yeah, it's a challenge.
Yeah, I think as you were saying that, a lot of the current issues are like flashing across my head, which is, all right, here's this individual. They've been there for a while. They just need to be resilient. They need to refresh. They need to step up. But as a leader, their leader talking to me, I don't know what else to do.
Mm.
You're a coach. Help out. Right. And what's your when you get that, what's your reaction to that? How do you deal with that?
And so you're the leader who's recommending this person to coaching? Is that what you're
So a
saying?
leader is talking to me, coach, or you, coach,
Yeah.
that they have a light bulb that just they've
Uh,
been in, right, needs resilience, needs to refresh, renew their spirit.
so, how you build a sponsor into your coaching is really important, right? So, in this case, if a sponsor of the coaching is speaking to me as coach of their direct report or somebody else in the organization, how is it that I integrate them into what they're hoping for in the client, right? Um, First question is always, have you discussed this with the client, right? Because it's not our job to be the first one to tell them they need this resilience or they need this change, right? And so if the answer is, well, yeah, kind of, which is often the answer, it's like, okay, well, is there anything you need to talk to this client about before we engage in the coaching? And then let's build in alignment meetings into our coaching process, meaning coach, client, and sponsor sit down. And I will have already worked with the client on their own sense of what they want to accomplish. We have rapport, but then we might share whatever the client's willing to share in terms of what they're working on. And it gives the sponsor the opportunity to step into the room and say what it is they want them to work on. And you're kind of acting as coach to the sponsor, right? Is what they're saying clear? Is it behavior based versus some sort of aspirational, big picture, unclear metric? And so we can be helpful in aligning the sponsor with the coaching project and engagement.
And I found sometimes that like when that happens, when I'm in the call with the sponsor or in the meeting with the sponsor, a whole bunch of like the unhealthy behaviors between the sponsor and the client all of a sudden come out. And I'm like, wait, I thought I was done parenting my teenagers. And now how did I get this? And it's eye opening as a coach. And you're like, okay, there's more going on. And I'm hearing more of,
Yeah, boy, it's very informative of your coaching. Who are you coaching there, right? You wish you could coach this. Yeah.
Yeah. I, yeah. You always, I remember the research of like the change research where leaders go through the change. It might be Cotter's, and then they believe like we're through it, but the rest of the organization is like three steps back and they haven't done the work. And as we think about the leader, right, describing that, like how much of the change process are you educating people about in this process to understand there are stages, there are steps you need to work through. And
Mhm.
as a leader, you need to, step back and say, well, how did you go through, those things for yourself as well?
Right. Yeah. So, if coaches are playing two roles, change manager, consultant, maybe, and coach, clearly we're going to be careful about how we advise around the change process and help our clients see where they stand in that and where they need to play, right? So we can present them with frameworks as a coaching client and say, hey, let's juice up our coaching with a little best practice on change, right? Here's some very simple kinds of information that I might share with you, depending on the attention span. Like maybe they like to read. Okay, read a little on change. Maybe it is even bringing your change management consultant colleague into the conversation and saying, hey, do you have a couple hour session you could do with my client on change? However, you can navigate that, clearly holding your hat as coach. That's great. For change managers in this space, they're fully engaged as contracted to help with change. So they can use coaching skills in that process that they're using. Yeah.
Sandy, maybe you could tell us a little bit. So some of our listeners are relatively new to the coaching game. But in 1999, early 2000s, like when did you see it taking off, right? Because we were just there at Converge. Now they're moving to Summit and another Converge at in October. This was my first Converge, and I honestly was really impressed with the quality of the people that were there. It really, I had a lot of misconceptions. So tell me, what's it been like for you over the 2.5 decades since you were a teenager showing up? So
Yeah, exactly. Right. I'm almost tempted to say the last 12 years, maybe. Okay, where am I now? Okay, say 2010, 2012, 2015. You'll see a lot of the really great authors about change, like Hawkins and Bresser, um, who wrote these wonderful how-to books for organizations and how to design and deploy coaching programs. And I would say right around the teens is when that really hit. And so that now organizations were getting consulting and understanding more about not just the individual coach, but actually how do you deploy coaching as a tool in your organization. And then personally, as a one-on-one coach, I didn't need to explain what I was doing as a coach. Like, it was no longer, what sport do you coach? It became right around then that, there was a sense of people knew what coaching was. It may have still carried a little bit of a bad feeling, like we only give it to our people who aren't doing well. There was still a little of that swimming around the system. But more and more it became, oh, everybody should have a coach. Oh, if you're a CEO and a C-suite guy, you get a coach. Yeah. So it took off, in terms of its reputation and what it can do. And, the ICF has sort of really just boomed in the last 5 years, even there's been a big boom. And now we see so many different ways that coaching infiltrates all kinds of professions and industries and so forth.
Yeah. So you wrote a book around building the core competencies of change and a guide to coaching inside of organizations. So what do you think what were you hoping that the readers would really get? Is it like, hey, look, here it is? Or were you,
Yeah.
tell us a little bit more about what you were hoping with that book, what you accomplished.
Yeah, I had to write that. But if people say, how did you get yourself to sit? I just had to. I think it was this seeing the disconnect for so many people who recognize the abilities of coaching and being able to convince their organizations to bring it in, And so I wanted to write a book that was helpful to coaches in terms of how to explain what they do and also the possibilities of what it can do inside an organization. HR professionals who now understood there was this thing coaching, but they only had individual external coaches, for example. But they saw this value in, like, how do you make that jump from, I get what we're doing here, but how does it apply to organizations? And so it was I hope to help people kind of, if you read this book, you can see lots of case histories from all over the world of people who deploy coaching in their organizations. How did they do it? What were they trying to accomplish? And how might we think about the different tools of coaching? So yeah, I mean, you build this understanding of coaching itself and then how to think about it within your organization and sell it in, basically. Yeah.
I have a relationship question between the terms. So if you have coach and then you have change or change agent, what's the sign in the middle mathematically? Is it equal? Is it like if you're a coach, you're automatically a change agent? If you're a change agent, you should be coaching. What's the relationship of the words for you?
Interesting question. So the very core competencies of coaching are to get people into action, to do something different, to, in effect, engage in a generative learning cycle, meaning change, right? When we learn, we are changing. And so if we're following the core competencies, we are creating this thing in our clients where we talked before about the growth mindset or lack thereof, right? Where we make it safe that you're not perfect. And then once we kind of make it safe for that, learning can take place and we can start to tease out what's behind that. And then we can actually get you into trying new stuff. And then you try new stuff and you're like, hey, now that I know how to, like, it's not too scary, I'm now encouraged as a leader to continue this idea of growth and learning and change, right? So you're creating change agents, I guess. Maybe it's a coach plus leader plus whatever, right? You're imbuing people with a competency to learn.
Yeah, I like that. I think of like the bios and how people introduce themselves, and I often see like coach as a separate word from change agent, and I'm very interested in how people see that differently. And sometimes it's at different levels. Like sometimes they describe it, well, I can coach you individually, and then if you're working on organizational change or maybe team change or right, it's somehow people are describing it differently. And I wonder maybe in your view, we should be describing the process in some kind of integrated way. Like
Mm.
You know what? Can I add something? I had just a client that said, our conversations make it safe for me to try out change. Like to me, and I was like, wow, thanks. Can you send me that in an email and put your name on the end so I could put that on my website? Anyway, I just, like that ability just to be like, hey, for this 1 hour, 50 minutes, whatever it happens to be, I can try something on that I probably would, I'm afraid to say in my organization. And I don't know how to make that change inside. I just had another conversation with a different leader where we were talking about firefighting versus fire protection, like thinking about it more strategic rather than crisis management. And we're like, well, how do we make this change inside the team?
Are we maybe I'm parsing it out too much, but as agent means kind of actor to me. And I don't think we're the actors, but we're like the little baking soda agent, we like help the thing rise. Yeah.
I like it. Everybody needs to watch the British Baking Show, right?
Oh yeah, 100%.
To be
I
better
love that
coaches.
show.
All right, so I'll riff with
Yeah.
that since we went with a light bulb. So the ingredients that coaches should be incorporating more, like if you are better at helping your clients change, what are some of the competencies or focus areas do you think people should be working on?
Oh man, wow, that's a big question. Well,
You have to answer it in baking ingredients too.
Yeah, and baking ingredients, since it is the Great British
right.
Baking Show.
Okay.
Yeah.
Patience and time, right? You got to let the yeast take effect. You got to let it kind of brew and you got to stay with it. So big yeast, right?
Yeah.
And then
That's
there's
great.
that,
It rises.
it rises, yeah. And then there's the temperature in the room, right? So it's too hot, too cold for that bread, it's not going to rise, right? And so we need to, put a little towel over it, keep it safe from any breezes, like, and create that environment that helps it rise.
I like that. I like that. A little bit of O'Neill's backbone and heart. Like, what is it time for now? Like, how much you need to
Mm.
push, how much
Yeah,
you need to support.
that's right.
Mm. Okay, so one of the things that you spoke about in your pre-conference was around creating coaching cultures, and you used some change management principles. Um, can you tell me a little bit around? Okay, so if as an individual coach, and say inside the organization, it's become a little groundswell of like people wanting coaching, and you see this pull largely either from HR or from a business leader say, hey, we really want more of this. What's the first conversation that you have inside an organization as you consult with them?
Usually at this point, they have a coach or two in there, right? Unless they're generally small organizations, right? They're new to it.
Yeah.
We know that Fortune 100s, 500s, they pretty much are there. It's so the conversation's different for each of them. So in a large organization that has a system built around coaching, the conversation is, what's the strategy behind it, right? Have you clarified what business problem you're solving for, or do you just have a great coaching program that's great for our executives' development, right? So it's entering into the questions around, how might you think about coaching as a catalyst to your business challenges, whether that's external marketing or internal operations, whether it's big events like big change management transformation events, or just daily kinds of things that are nagging at the system that don't work. Like, how do you use coaching as a tool now that you already have this established program that's doing, what tends to get into a rut, right? You do the same thing, the same kind of program. Oh, we'll bring in AI and technology to do it better, but are we stepping up in the way we think about coaching and how it can apply to the whole organization and very tied into the strategy of the organization?
I think that's the way to get it, the stickiness inside of the organization is to connect it to the strategy rather than it to be some exciting, flash in the pan, temporary thing. Maybe how democratized coaching maybe in, little 3 to 5 years ago. And you're like, well, hey, are we going to stick with it?
Yeah.
Um,
And if you can get it activated in places where there are clear metrics of success, revenue, like in a sales operation, consulting, professional services, where part of that is actually revenue enhancement. And you can do pilot programs in some sections of organizations that then realize these enhanced earnings, revenue growth, client growth. Then you're telling the system how it can work and how it can very much tie to business success.
Yeah, I like that. Do you like, I'm thinking of like a leader saying they need something in their organization, like we're lacking new ideas to meet the market, like innovation, right? Whatever those things are. Is there anything that comes to mind, like as an example for you, that is just, oh, that's a good tie-in. That's a nice way to connect these things.
Um, well, if you mention innovation, there's an example of an organization that was going to be obsolete because it was telecom and the technology was changing. This happened in a telecom client. It happened in a gas services company, where the energy supply was changing, and so their services were plummeting in terms of use, right? So obsolescence, need for innovation is a massive change for an organization. It requires growth mindset. It requires from the very top levels of an organization. And so these particular case histories that I have in my book also talk to where did they start? They started with the executive team. And while you're coaching executives in order to help them deal with this pretty traumatic change in the offing, you're doing a lot of business things, right? As the consultants and the executives are, they're like bringing on different competencies to the executive team. They're thinking about what maybe they need to merge with another company, and they're doing the business. But then you start at the very beginning with the coaching, and it helps to pull people into that growth mindset. And then how you deploy coaching throughout that organization. Each of these particular case histories, they started group coaching, team coaching, using platforms to coach a lot of people throughout the organization so that innovation, meeting change with a growth mindset instead of, fear. Well, you have the fear, but so really integrating coaching types and tools with the whole organization to help it change. So that's an example of, wow, that's a very powerful testimony to coaching and what's needed for an organization.
Wow. It just makes me think of in terms of like when an organization kind of dips their toe in the water of coaching and they see a benefit, you kind of need those people towards the top to say, hey, look, this is really changing things for us, or this is changing how I'm showing up. How do we get more of this? It's and almost like, do you need the sandwich? I know in sort of in the change model, really it's around sponsorship, but really you need those other people that are also saying, hey, it's very possible even coaching skills for frontline supervisors can really shift a culture in a huge way.
Yeah. Well, when you talk about coaching culture, yeah, you've got a lot of tools, right? The group coaching, team coaching, individual coaching, teaching coaching skills to leaders so that they're adopting the core competencies. It's very powerful. And you want to be able to use your full toolkit to create this, quote, coaching culture. And, what I see it as is this operationalizing Peter Senge's work of the learning organization. Like, oh, we got the perfect tool, like we knew we needed learning organizations. We didn't necessarily have this tool to get there. And now we're teaching our organizations how to have this mindset of learning and capability.
I felt like we were making so much progress with Sange's like fifth discipline field book learning, right? And then we hit some kind of speed bump, at least for the organizations I've worked in, where we didn't focus as much on the aspect of your pace of learning has to keep up with the rate of change. Right. I don't know what is it organizational attention span? Like, are people focusing on it? And I just don't I don't experience as much about it, but it seems so valuable at the time.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about all the waves of things we've been through, right? We've been through, learning organizations, that sounds great. And then you try that, and then it's like, well, how do you sustain it? You embed your systems to do debriefs on learnings and things like that. But how do you create that, change we know we can do for an individual? Like you're changing through your coaching, we hope, that kind of mindset, mental model somebody carries around as a leader. And if you can do that within an organization through all that, the stuff we talked about with the tools of coaching, now you're changing the mindset of the organization around it. So I think it's not, we can't be a fad now. Look how far coaching has come,
Yeah. And I think the reputation of coaches is only improving in a lot of circles, especially sort of in this was my biggest shock around Converge, was the number of not just the individual coaches that were, very solopreneurs or entrepreneurs, but the number of coaches from different organizations that were either internal or, I think it was those internal coaches, and you're like, wow, there is there's a large number of coaches that are internal. And I think about even some of our guests or some of our future guests from companies all over, from EY to Gooder or other products like that we just think of, or Samsung or things like that. It has really gained a credibility in the corporate world.
Yeah, and I guess there's one kind of movement that I think a lot of people have seen in the newest generation in the workforce. They keep wanting more feedback. Develop me, grow me, make me better. And then the leaders are going, I had to work my butt off to get here. You just need to do what I tell you, And we have a tool for this movement that we're seeing in our younger people, which is, And so, we're seeing coaching, we're seeing coaches and populate all these diverse companies, sizes and cultures and so forth. Yeah.
Early days too, like so much earlier, but like before there's a problem, or like in the early formation stages, that they have coaches that are, sitting alongside the C-suite. That to me is like, that amplifies their maturity as an organization much faster than, say, getting to a problem and going, oh crap, we need to bring somebody in to help us.
Yeah. I mean, well, if you think about the startups and the entrepreneurial movement that is just so taken over with technology now, and that they're very often that younger generation, and they understand what it is to have a coach because the stress, the challenge of that. A lot of those coaches too are former startup professionals, so there's this melding of the kind of consulting and coaching piece as well. But a lot of focus there also on the well-being of the startup entrepreneur.
Yeah.
What's your best?
Sandy, go ahead, Dave.
I was just saying, what's your best advice for people early career to be individual, group, team coaches?
So new coaches and how to step into that. And so go with what you know. If you're out of a particular industry, you have a particular expertise from life experience, it can inform your coaching, and it can inform your comfort with coaching. And so I had a coaching student who was ADHD, and she did a lot of work in that area, not just that she would, I have it so I can coach on it. It was much more, how do I study this and really understand it from a lot of different angles and perspectives and be good at this? And then through coaching individuals, marketing herself ADHD, but then also speaking on it and talking about, you build the understanding of how you can help people as you coach people, and sharing that and sharing those anecdotes and experiences with what you know how to do. Go with what you know and go with your community of people around you. Start there. And I have to do this, right? Volunteer with ICF. I mean, it's an amazing community. And I would say much of the work that I had in my early days was through referrals from other coaches or partnering with other coaches. Find your community. It's really good.
Well said.
Yeah, maybe to add on sort of an additional, we didn't really talk about this, Sandy, because we really talked about coaching and change. But as your sort of role on sort of the ethics committee or review, what do you see as sort of where do either coaches or organizations right now, where are they getting stuck or really running into problems?
Yeah. So just to back up one sec, is that when you become an ICF certified coach, you have signed on to the Code of Ethics. And the best thing to do there is to just be aware, be aware of what you think is ethical in your practice. And if you feel uncomfortable, that's a great sign to take a step back and think about, and maybe read the code of ethics again and say, how does that inform what I'm thinking about? So always just, being present with how you feel about your own sense of comfort, right, in the ethical space. Really important. In terms of organizations, there's a couple of things there. One is multiple hats. So we see a lot of internal coaches, it's their, part-time job. And so if I'm sitting over in operations and my daytime job is in finance, and we're ramming through a new budget, cutting process, and now I'm coaching somebody who's vulnerable to that cutting process, how do I handle that as a coach? Or I'm a coach, I'm an HR professional. I contract with my client, we have full confidentiality. Oh, 6 months after I stop coaching, I'm now being asked to weigh in on their promotion. What do I do? I didn't put that in the original contract because I didn't know, right? So this multiple hats challenge is something to be aware of. We had a case where we had somebody who was an external coach who coached top executive, closed, perfect contract, confidentiality, and then second contract was to do interviews on that executive team with the HR department sponsoring those interviews and then receiving the feedback on the executive team. This executive, who they had formerly coached, took offense to that, felt it was sharing of confidential information. And as it turns out, they were well contracted, right? They closed one contract. There was nothing from the coaching that was shared. It was two separate things that occurred. And so the lesson there is not that the contract is perfect, but rather we have to think about when we make commitments across multiple types of engagements, will this create any kind of distrust in the system? Because it may be ethical, but it might feel dicey to people. Yeah.
Sandy, that was probably, you just shared one of my biggest ahas from your pre-conference discussion. Was a lot of times these issues are not issues of ethics, but issues of trust that will break down inside of organizations with changing roles. And it's really, a lot of wisdom there.
It's a challenge. And, every time we get a case, and it's a formal process where you submit a clear, like which codes or standards are violated in the code, and then the complainant has fully vetted and sent documents, and then we approach the coach and they then give a response to that. And then we have multiple committees in a formal complaint review process. First, the leadership determines, if it goes through, then we have the investigative team that pulls together the interviews and the documentation. Then we have the final review that will then, so all separate, keeping some level of integrity in each, so that we have about 8 to 10 people who for each case are engaged, and all confidential. There is no public revealing of anything. We're very tight on that. And it's a very difficult process, but it also is a learning process, and that's the consequence, is learning from this. When you have been found to be in breach, you will be asked to maybe work with a coach supervisor or do some study on one of those pieces. So it's really meant not to punish, but rather to inform and to create that awareness of what keeps a trusting environment around our profession.
Really great. Sandy, what's the best way for our listeners or our organizations that may be listening at? What's the best way to get a hold of you?
Of me?
How do we find you?
Oh, find me.
Yeah.
Well, personally, let's see. I'm
LinkedIn.
at SLS. Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, Sandra L. Stewart, on LinkedIn. My website is, you can get me at sandraleestewart.com, or you can get me at slscoach.com, and that's my email, slscoach.com. So
nice.
yeah.
Nice. Dave, did you have any takeaways or any final thoughts before we?
I so appreciate you bringing your energy into this podcast, and it was one I loved the idea of the role of a coach in change, and like coaches really needing to think about that and the competencies associated with it as well. I want to go back and look at your building the core competencies of change, because I think there's some things that I need to refresh for myself. And I'm looking forward to staying connected with you and asking you some more questions about that once I go back and take a look at it.
Fantastic, David. I'm here. And thank you so much. This has been really fun. I have to tell you, this was a lot more fun than I thought.
We beat expectations.
I know.
I love that. I would just recommend this. So we are connected to Sandy through the coaching and organizations in the International Coach Federation. I recommend any of our listeners, if you don't know about that, or if you don't know a way to get connected to ICF, whether that's through your local chapter or things like that, you get to meet people like Sandy that have a wealth of knowledge and of experience. And so we really appreciate you, as well as CIO that connected us, Robert Garcia, Catherine Lord, that are just doing good work in the coaching space and making our occupation or our vocation more credible every day through some of the work. So I hope you guys got to hear a little bit around what goes on underneath, especially maybe you've heard a little bit more about what will happen if there's an ethics issue. That is a little fascinating. A lot of times we don't get to necessarily hear kind of the thoroughness and the seriousness that ICF considers it. So thank you. And until next time, keep leading with courage, keep learning, and remember, your character is your greatest asset. Thanks for listening. If you love this podcast, please share it with another coach or leader. Make sure you go to the show notes to get all the resources from today's episode.